This is a talk through of the slides for Chapter 4 of Sommerville about requirements engineering. So this is a talk through about Chapter 4 of Sommerville, requirements engineering. So these are the topics: functional, and I prefer the term cross-functional requirements, processes, requirement solicitation, specification, validation, and change. So requirements engineering is the process of establishing what you need to do. And the system requirements are the descriptions of those services and the constraints under which they operate. What's a requirement, right? It could be a high-level abstract statement, or it could be something very specific. The requirements may be the basis for a bid for contract. They may be a basis for the contract itself, and they may be both of those may be requirements. I'm not going to read through this, but this is a statement from Davis. Right? The contract may have to be a little bit more specific than the original request. These are two types of requirements: user requirements, and this is maybe statements in natural language with diagrams supporting that shows how things work, and they're written for customers. System requirements, on the other hand, are what you would put in place for a contract between a client and a contractor. Right? Here is an example of the difference. The Mentcare system shall generate monthly management reports showing the cost of drugs prescribed by each clinic during the month. And then the system requirements are much more specific, and there's more detail and nuance in them than the high-level user requirement. And they're different audiences for each of them, right? The system requirements, the system end users, the client engineers, the system architects, and the software developers, whereas the user requirements are more about the client managers, the system end users, the contract managers, and the client engineers. Different audiences. So who are the system stakeholders, or sometimes they're called the system participants? Right? There are end users, there are system managers, system owners, and potentially external stakeholders. Sommerville's using the Mentcare case study, and I didn't work through that, and I'm not going to talk through that in explicit detail here. But you can understand that in a medical system, there's patients, doctors, nurses, receptionists, and IT staff. Right? They're all different stakeholders in the system. There's some more: a medical ethics manager, healthcare managers, and medical records staff. I haven't talked explicitly about Agile methods. Even if you're doing Agile, you still need requirements. The reason why Agile came about, or one reason, was because taking a lot of time to put together a system requirements document meant that things changed before you could actually act on that. So Agile says, okay, what's the most important thing to do first? And tries to incrementally add requirements as you move forward while implementing significant paths through the system. As I think I've said before, I don't like the word non-functional. I prefer the word cross-functional. Functional and cross-functional requirements. Cross-functional requirements are ilities or performance requirements usually. Right? And I'm not going to go through, read what's on here, but I think you know what they're about. The domain requirements at the bottom, this is maybe some extra constraints on the system that we need to know about. Okay, so a functional requirement, funnily enough, describes the functionality, right? They may be high level, but they should describe, the system requirement should describe things in detail. Right, and here's some more from the Mentcare system. Again, I'm not going to read it out. You should read through it and think about it. You need to have requirements that are precisely stated and unambiguous. Right? That is always cause for concern if they're not precisely stated or if they're ambiguous. They should be complete and consistent. Right? As I think I've said, a lot of systems I've worked on, it has been very hard to get a 100% complete requirements document. It's much easier to get a consistent set of requirements on the requirements that you do capture. And as it says there, in practice, it's impossible to produce a complete and consistent requirements document. Cross-functional requirements. These are the properties or constraints, reliability, response time, storage requirements, I/O capability, system representations. Sometimes you may want to say that you have to use a particular IDE or programming language or development method. I think I've said previously that that may not necessarily be the right thing to do, but if you are doing a brownfield project, it makes sense to use what's happening before.